Like
So there are three HR professionals on this podcast, I think. So this is a question to largely all three of you that I remember somewhere reading about the idea of completely virtual office. Have anyone of you
mm,
followed that? So it
yeah,
basically says that imagine like something like a real office, but it's like how Zoom has rooms in it.
right, right.
Like you can make
Mm,
rooms. Such similarly, a software is there where there are multiple rooms and multiple people, and you're based out of your home, and you're sort of interacting with those rooms and all the frameworks that exist in a physical office. Like for example, you want to enter a cabin, you want to check if there's a meeting going on or not. All those frameworks are codified by the technology in that room, and you again do whatever a 10 to 6 job, but it's all based out of an online platform. What do you think? Can that be the future? And if yes, how do you think that's going to sort of change the current landscape of work culture?
I'll ask for this question. I think I'll let Rushi or Gautam take it first.
I am a bit conflicted on this, right? I mean, I'd like to know your opinion on
Human
the what.
interactions, physical, no,
Yeah,
physically.
human. So I am the reason I'm confident is because I know when you are. I mean, for me personally, when I'm working from home or working virtually, the advantage that I have is I have very less distractions. I can focus on, especially when you're working on things that requires focus and thinking and analysis. The time that you spend with yourself becomes very important, and that the virtual working kind of provides that. But at the same time, in Indian context, at least in Indian context, being in office, having FaceTime with people, interacting with your peers, interacting with your stakeholders, and then influencing them to have take decisions to think in way you want to, those things become very important. I mean, I recently had an experience troubleshooting a thing with the attendance team, and I was actually in the office and talking to them. They instantly seemed to get convinced and respond to my proposals and queries. So that is also there, and so there are obvious benefits to both. So I'm often conflicted between how to manage, and maybe what I was thought in my mind, the framework there, I'll spend some time in my own spaces, and then I'll go to office for a certain amount of time, and then get things done through this way. So maybe a split kind of hybrid kind of work is the way forward. But I also heard about this innovation, Abhi, that you're talking about. I think it's called Zoom Spots, where you had that virtual office and where you had spaces in which people are open to talking. So they would mark themselves as open to having conversations, whereas the other people would mark themselves as focused work. So the etiquette is that you should not disturb people who are doing focused work, and go have random topic conversation with people who have marked are open to serendipity or open to conversation. So
Yeah.
yeah, Rishi.
This is very interesting because the other day, Parth and I spoke about developing something like this. I think the problem with the modern workspace is the fact that it oversimplifies collaboration by the use of space. Um, I think the retreating into a cave to work and then emerging again to sort of collaborate and then going back. I think alternating that, just like what Gautam mentioned, I think that is the way to go. So I don't think you can have permanence of both, of either. It has to be that sort of a cyclical thing. But how frequently that happens, how frequently you emerge, and how frequently you collaborate, I think that will vary from the actual job. Like for instance, a query desk person cannot be working in isolation. That is a absolute front-facing role. But on the other hand, a data analyst would need that sort of isolation, but also frequent interactions to understand the direction in which the data has to be analyzed, cut, presented, and so on, or even for that matter, collected. So I think that really varies. So I don't think you can put a pin on that, because a lot of factors come in. Because anything that you make as a rule, people will not may want to, because it will not satisfy everybody. But generally, I would say that about a 60-40 split with 60% working in isolation, 40% working in groups. I think that is generally at an individual contributor role. I think that's a good enough ratio for me.
Parth,
Right.
your thoughts on this?
I think very interesting to hear both of you. I think my perception about this, and so I recently I have through an article by Cal Newport, I got introduced to area of study wherein anthropologists especially are trying to figure out what are the parallels between our modern knowledge work and how we worked for centuries, no, even thousands of centuries before. So we were discussing about evolution, right? So human brain has evolved over, I think, millions of years. So even though Homo sapiens, okay, maybe not only that, but we also carry the the evolution that happened in our earlier ancestors with us. Some of
Yeah.
them especially, right? So to me, it appears that we actually did not evolve to work remotely. So, what I mean by that is, whenever we have a setting where we are completely remote, our brains handle or our brains take cues differently. So, you must have heard of this famous refrain, right? That communication is like 90% body language, 10%
Yeah.
your word, something like that, right?
Correct.
That's a very important part. It's not a very light thing, because human learning and human existence has always been through non-verbal cues. So when you say that your attendance, you were working with them, you being present there, you were able to convince them, you were able to collaborate better. That's not by accident. It has millions of years of evolution helping you to convince them, and their brains being used to somebody being present and convincing them. So I think, okay, I understand we cannot, like, some people are following paleo diets these days, so we cannot go and eat raw liver.
Hmm.
That's not the point of paleo diet. The point of
Hmm.
paleo diet is to reduce processed foods, right? So in
Correct.
the
Correct.
same way, if you look at how, so because our stuff also evolved, right?
Hmm.
So same way our brains also evolve. So the point is not to completely work like we used to work in the prehistoric times, but getting some lessons from them on how we can make this kind of work effective. So maybe this can be a topic of the next podcast. Maybe I would love to talk more about it. But to me, it appears that online work goes against the millions of years of evolution that we've had. So it's okay for a stopgap. For example, when I got injured recently, it was a blessing because I could actually lie down and work. I was told to bed rest for some time. So in that sense, it's good. I'm not a Luddite who's saying, okay, this is a completely bad idea. Everybody should come to office. That's not
Right.
my point. But I think so in my mind, there is more of a bent towards coming to office, because that is how we evolved. We cannot say in the last 2 years we can undo the evolution of last 2 million years, right?
Hmm.
That would be weird. So a lot of friction that happens these days, and there is a lot of friction between people who are working in office and working at home.
Hmm.
People tend to gloss over that because they don't want to go back, right, to full
Yeah.
work from office. So we have that problem of being participants in a study whose whose results are going to impact us. So we tend to gloss over the friction that's inherent. But so that's my viewpoint. You can use it in a pinch. It's good for an emergency situation like COVID, for example. The entire
Hmm.
world moved online. But I still think we have an evolutionary bias towards working in person.